When the judge finalized the divorce, nothing dramatic happened. No shouting, no tears in the hallway, just paper sliding across polished wood, signatures in blue ink, and my husband's lawyer adjusting his cufflinks as if concluding a routine transaction. By the end of that week, the house was no longer mine. The joint accounts were frozen, then reallocated. The car lease had been structured in his name all along. Even the small consulting business I had helped him build was documented in ways I had never questioned. "You'll land somewhere?" he said outside the courthouse, calm, almost kind. But nobody wants a homeless woman. Sophia, that's just reality. It wasn't cruelty. It was positioning. A summary of how thoroughly he had prepared. What stayed with me wasn't the insult. It was the certainty. For months afterward, my life became smaller and smaller. Temporary rooms. A shelter when savings ran out. I learned how to fold my dignity tightly, like clothing I didn't have space for. The humiliation wasn't public in the way people imagine. There was no viral moment, no dramatic scene, just procedural erasure. I stopped correcting people when they assumed I'd made reckless choices. It was easier to let them believe I'd mismanaged my own life. One afternoon, I was behind a cafe I used to visit when I still had a credit card in my own name. I wasn't looking for food exactly. I was looking for something salvageable. A coat someone had discarded, a bag without a broken zipper. "Excuse me," a woman said behind me. Her voice carried careful professionalism. "Are you Sophia Hartfield?" I almost said no. The name felt misplaced. When I nodded, she smiled in a way that suggested confirmation, not warmth. "My name is Elaine Porter. I'm an estate attorney in New York. Your great-uncle, Charles Hartfield, passed away 2 weeks ago." "You are his sole-named heir?" I stared at her suit first, then her leather portfolio, then her shoes, which had never stepped near an alley like this. "I think you have the wrong person," I said. "I don't," she replied gently. "He left you his Manhattan residence, several assets, including a Ferrari, and an estate valued at approximately $47 million. The numbers meant nothing. They floated above me like a language I didn't speak anymore. "There is one condition." Of course there was. "You must relocate to New York within 30 days. Reside in the primary property for 1 calendar year, and assume interim oversight of the Hartfield Foundation. If you decline or fail to meet those requirements, the estate transfers to a corporate trustee currently petitioning for management rights." She paused just long enough. "The trustee's legal representation is your former husband's firm." That was the first moment I felt something other than exhaustion. Not hope. Not excitement, clarity. If I refused, the narrative would complete itself. I would remain exactly what he had described, a woman unable to hold on to anything substantial, and he would step neatly into proximity with what had been left for me. New York did not feel like rescue. The mansion, 4 stories of stone and glass, felt excessive, almost confrontational. Staff members observed me with restrained neutrality. No one was rude. No one was welcoming. The Ferrari sat in the garage like an accusation. The Hartfield Foundation, I learned, funded housing initiatives and legal support for displaced women. My uncle had built it quietly over decades. On paper, it was stable. In practice, it was fraying. Consultant fees inflated beyond necessity, legal advisory costs climbing steadily, a proposed restructuring plan drafted by my ex-husband's firm that would place long-term control in the hands of the same corporate trustee waiting in the wings. It wasn't theft, it was attrition, influenced through paperwork. At first, I attended meetings silently. I let board members underestimate me. They assumed I was a symbolic heir, a temporary inconvenience. I read everything at night: contracts, amendments, budget allocations. I began requesting small clarifications, then independent audits, quietly. No speeches, no declarations of reform, just signatures placed with intention. 3 months into my residency, the board convened for what they believed would be a routine vote on restructuring. Instead, an independent auditor, hired at my request, presented findings. Projected savings under the proposed corporate trustee were exaggerated. Advisory fees were disproportionately allocated to my ex-husband's firm. Certain grant distributions had been deprioritized to create the appearance of inefficiency. The room did not explode. It tightened. One board member cleared his throat. Another asked for documentation. The auditor provided it calmly. By the end of that meeting, the restructuring vote was suspended pending investigation. The advisory contract with my ex-husband's firm was terminated effective immediately. No one looked at me with awe, but they looked at me differently. Authority had not stormed in dramatically. It had arrived in spreadsheets and formal procedure, the same tools once used against me. A week later, my ex-husband called. "I heard you're settling in," he said. His tone was measured, curious. "You could have just declined all this, lived quietly." "I am living quietly," I replied. There was a pause. I could almost hear him recalculating. "You don't have to turn this into something adversarial." "It isn't," I said. It's administrative." I declined his offer to meet. The year passed without spectacle. I attended foundation site visits. I listened to women explain how small legal oversights had cost them homes, custody, stability. I recognized the pattern, not dramatic villainy, but strategic imbalance. I did not become fearless. I still hesitated before signing large checks. I still questioned whether reserved to be in rooms lined with art worth more than I once had in savings. The Ferrari remained untouched. Excess no longer interested me. When the year concluded, Elaine Porter asked whether I intended to liquidate assets, sell the property, step back. Instead, I restructured the foundation permanently, reduced consultant dependence, implemented financial transparency measures, allocated additional funding specifically for legal literacy programs, not to make a statement, to prevent repetition. On the final day of the residency requirement, I stood in my uncle's study, reviewing documents that secured multi-year funding for emergency housing initiatives. My signature looked steadier than it had in court. I did not feel triumphant. There was no swelling music in the background of my life. I still carried the memory of folding my belongings into a single bag, but I no longer carried his certainty. Nobody announced that I had reclaimed anything. There was no public reversal of narrative. My ex-husband continued practicing law. The world did not apologize. What changed was quieter. When I walked into meetings now, I was not bracing for erasure. When I signed my name, I understood every line beneath it. I had lost everything once through trust without scrutiny. This time I kept what mattered through attention, not revenge, not spectacle. Just dignity, structured carefully, protected deliberately, and held without asking permission.